Okay, let me tell you a little bit about our guest speaker today, Hugh Ballou. Had a chance to talk with him. Fascinating individual. His company is called Center Vision. This guy is very, very unique. And I really, like I said, it was a pleasure talking to him. He's a transformational leadership strategist. And his background is as a conductor, musical ensembles. And you think about it, like I said before, what do conductors do? They lead the orchestra. So he's taken these principles that he's learned over many, many years of how he leads the orchestra, how he helps to lead companies, and how he helps to transform companies. His talk today is about orchestrating high performance. Please welcome everybody, Hugh Ballou.
Repeat what you hear. No doubt what to do. I'm going to teach you something. How many times have you been somewhere and the leadership wasn't clear and you weren't sure what to do? Conductor has to be very clear on the results they want, because what we get is a reflection of what they see is what you get. Let me teach you a shorthand. Sometimes you're in a place where applause, you don't have enough time. So let's learn the applause. Just one. Put your hands together. Ready, and. Ready, and. This is a high performing group already. Right, so you can do it again. Ready? The conductor is perceived to be a dictator. Let me tell you, you got this little white stick, you can't make anybody do anything. What you can do is you can influence people to perform at a higher standard, because you really know what you want. And leaders are, number one, a person of influence. Give me some other words that define leader. Just give me some words that define leader. What a leader is. Charisma. Trailblazer. Decisive. Entrepreneur.
Visionary.
Innovator. A lot of good things. I mean, if you look up on the internet leadership, you got a whole bunch of stuff. And so the reason I position myself as a transformational leadership strategist is because it's the integration of strategy and performance. I loved your elevator pitch. You just get right on it. You need to have the right people in the right place of the bus. You need to check them out. You need to know what you're doing as a leader. And you have to build a culture of high performance. I've studied, and you got to have the contracts. That little zinger you put in there, I hope that's not you. Yeah. So many leaders just assume things. You ever seen that Benny Hill show where he takes assume and he puts two lines in it? Well, yeah, you're in the middle, you and me. Transformational leadership is a style of leadership. It's about building leaders on teams. Now, you think about a choir or you think about an orchestra. You can do this all day long and nothing happens until people play or they sing. So the conductor is a person of influence. And over 40 years of conducting, I have the privilege of working in some mega churches around the southeast. Can y'all tell I'm a southerner? I hired the Florida Orchestra, Ensemble Symphony, the Atlanta Symphony. And I got to tell you, you're standing in front of a bunch of really cocky union musicians. They're going to dare you. And so it's important to know what you stand for as a leader. I was headed to Vegas one time, and one of the times I went through Chicago that I actually made it through Chicago, I had a couple hours, and I looked at my shoes, and I said, I'm going to speak in front of these CEOs, and I don't look very professional because my shoes aren't shined. So it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and had a couple hour layover. So I saw this shoe shine booth, and wasn't anybody there. And I saw, oh, there's a guy running down the hallway. He says, I'm coming, get up there. So I got up, put my feet up there, and I said, can you make me look professional? He says, no way. I can make your shoes look great. I said, whoa, I bet you're good at what you do. He says, no, I'm great at what I do. This guy had a pressed uniform. He had a late model cell phone. He was like, oh. So I said, I'm going to pay attention. He says, you know, to be great, you got to show up. Not just physically, but you got to be fully present. You ever hear a concert, piece of music was okay, then you heard the same piece later, and it was excellent? It was just so exciting. What was the difference? The commitment of the conductor, the influence of the conductor, the leader empowering people. So this guy says, first you got to show up. And he said, you see these rags? I go home and clean them. If I'm going to be great, I have to be prepared. I have to have my rags ready. These other guys, they don't do it, they're not great. You have to show people you care. Serve people with your heart. If they know you care, that makes the difference. And lastly, he says, be great at what you do. We don't need more mediocre people. We need great people. And I said, whoa, you should go on the road and teach this. No way, I like what I do. I said, great, he got a $10 tip. I bet he gets lots of $10 tips. There's two words in the Greek that I know about that for time. Chronos, we spend time putting things in our strategy, putting things in order. We're so focused on what comes next, what we ought to be doing, that we sometimes miss some things that come our way. The other word that has impact is kairos. There's this kairos moment that we don't expect. And if we're not paying attention, it's going to pass us by. I can't tell you how many have passed me by. What is your, in a short phrase, what is your biggest challenge as a leader? Just give me a few. What is your biggest challenge today as a leader? Finding good people. Somebody hired me when I was nothing but potential, and they let me stay. So, and I worked out, but finding good people is a big one. Yes, sir.
Getting employees to take initiative.
Getting employees to take initiative.
Leading different generations.
Leading generations that are different than yours. I'm a boomer, by the way. I publish a magazine for leaders, nonprofit leaders. The one that's printing today is about the millennial generation. The cover is Frances Hasselbein. Anybody know that name? She's 98. Peter Drucker chose her to run his foundation. We have some dialogue on boomers, and my wife's children were millennials. It was like, oh, train wreck. Had to learn things. So what's another challenge? Generations, finding good people, and then Initiative.
Clearing all the noise.
Say it again.
Clearing all the noise.
Pretty noisy place, this world, isn't it? Lots of voices. How do we discern the right thing? The last 4 years, I've been in a deep dive study with the work of Murray Bowen, B-O-W-E-N, psychiatrist, did family therapy. And he started seeing patterns in human behavior. When we show up in any group emotional system, we show up as who we are from our family of origin, what we've learned, what we've been taught, who we are. Generations above us have influenced us. And sometimes we're in a trap that we don't see. And the fundamental piece of leadership, he went from family therapy to teaching us about ourselves, learning about ourselves by discovering the stories from our generations, and then managing ourselves. So management of self is the number one challenge I see with leaders. We want to blame others, and I love asking people, well, so what was your role in this situation, this fictitious topic of conflict in the workplace? So there's lots of voices, lots of noises, lots of people that have opinions. I put a little sheet on your table. It's the principles that I've discovered over time that I developed from my methodology of influencing people as a conductor. And I got to tell you, it's no different. If you're running a nonprofit, if you're a pastor or rabbi, or you're running a multinational corporation, or you're a solopreneur, you are first and foremost, as a leader, a person of influence. Now, I heard lots of traits about leaders. Do you think transparency is a leadership trait?
Nope.
He says no. Thank you.
No, not at all. And there are many examples of where there's no transparency and they're still leaders.
Yes.
It's a trade as long as you delete all your personal emails.
Hidden message there. One of my friends, Cal Turner, went to his staff at Dollar General, and he said, my father founded this company. I am CEO and president, and I got this job because of my genes, not because of my skill. But I know where this company needs to go. We're going public, and I need your skills to make that happen. Every person stepped up. Every person took initiative because they had a challenge. And he said, Hugh, leadership is about defining your gaps and then finding competent people to fill those gaps. But you got to be transparent enough to say that. That's not whining. Let's just say, I got the vision. You're the team. You're going to do it. One of the biggest challenges I find with leaders is overfunction. Leaders complain others don't do enough. Well, guess what? The reciprocity to overfunctioning is underfunctioning. You're paying people to do things. You're doing too much. You're just putting initiative, you're just putting water on their initiative. We don't hire the best oboe player for our orchestra and then proceed to tell them how to play the oboe. We're very prepared. We ask people to step up. We give them clear directions. It's no difference. I'm going to talk about the 4 principles. The first one is foundations. I heard you talk about strategy, Ken. That's essential. So many people wing it. Strategy. Okay, what if the conductor stood on the podium, which is the thing you stand on, and had no strategy? This is a snapshot of the conductor's score. Everything that happens is written down. Every single thing that happens is written down. Every player in the orchestra has music that fits in here. How loud, how fast, what the articulation is. Those are simply dots on a piece of paper. We make it come alive because we pull it out of people. There's a very distinctive difference in push leadership. That's the charismatic, the autocratic leader. Do this and do it this way. So why do you have good people if you're going to tell them everything to do? The conductor says, here's your music, let's play. This is where we start. You noticed when I gave you the clap, put your hands together, let's do it again. I want you to observe what happens. We're going to clap right at the same time, ready? Now, why did you know how to clap at that exact moment? Because you're right together. Listen again. I gave you 3 pieces of information. If you're going to sing or play, it tells you when to breathe. And you notice when I did this, you clapped softly. And when I did this, you clapped loudly. So I tell you the tempo, I tell you the dynamic, and I tell you when we're going to start. I didn't say a word, but I gave people all the information they need. So next time you watch a conductor, they'll stand on the podium, they'll grab the baton, everybody's ready, and then they'll give you what's called a prep. We don't prep people. We just say, go. Ready, fire, aim. We give people marching orders. And we don't have a framework for how we're going to, whether we're a nonprofit, whether we're a church or synagogue, whether we're a multinational corporation or you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur. It's essential to have the framework of where you're going and how you're going to get there. It engages people on your team. They know where they fit. So the number 1 principle, the conductor knows the score. Every hour of rehearsal, we spent 2 to 3 hours studying what we want. It's a very clear vision. We possess the vision. Transformational leadership is the opposite of charismatic. It's about building leaders on teams. It's not about you. It's about the vision. It's not about you telling everybody what to do, pushing them around and being the boss. By the way, spell boss backwards. It's double S-O-B. It's not about you telling people what to do and forcing them. It's about you pulling the initiative, about you not over-functioning, about you being very clear. So foundations is about the strategy. It's about the framework. It's the music that everybody plays. People are engaged because they know where to engage, how to engage. Now, you couldn't build a website unless you have a framework. Or what's it called? A wireframe? Whatever it is.
Wire diagram.
Yeah. You need that to know how it's going to work together. And then you work with the client, and here's the final result. What we see It's just the surface. Yeah, I'm so glad you talked about it's an integration of marketing. It's more than just a pretty front. Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of web designers I call propeller heads. Just know a little bit to be dangerous. So be very skilled, be very knowledgeable. That's all part of knowing the score. When I step up and I've prepared, I know what the result is. I've got the work there. I know what we're going to do. And then people are ready. Listen to the time, and then we play. So the first principle that's important is know what you stand for, have a vision, be able to articulate clearly that vision. That means you go from believing. You ever hear Wayne Dyer talk about believing is like a note your mommy pins on you and sends you off to school? To knowing. You've studied it, you've planned the strategy, you have, in our case, the rehearsal plan, you have a plan. I'm going to talk about meetings in a minute. The biggest #1 team killer in the world, bad, boring meetings. We know what we're going to do, we have our skill set, we're very clear on what we're going to do. Doesn't mean we're always right. Had a leader, I worked with a lot of power CEOs, and he said one time on the phone, we're talking about his folks and getting them on the same page, and he says, you know, I have to always be right. And I said, really? Isn't it more important that you help other people be right? What happens when you're not there to give the answer? Oh. So spend more time helping other people be right than spending more time helping them know what the foundation is. This is what we stand for. Here's a big trap that we get into. We write strategies and we do core values. Great, integrity, honesty, value. We write them, we feel good, we put them away, nothing happens. Theoretically, you build your goals and your strategies from that. The missing component is what's called guiding principles. It's another thing from my Bowen Systems study. If we are defined as a leader, here are our principles. We make decisions based on principles, not because we want people to like us. That's a downward spiral. We make decisions based on principles that everybody has bought into. So there's personal principles. I'm going to lead people. I'm not going to function as one of them. I'm going to function as their leader, their inspirer, their influencer. And by the way, how many people have children? Do your children pick up habits from you? Have you reflected and said, where did you learn that? Well, duh. Employees, team members, board members, they're no different. They will model what you do. The #1 transformational leadership trait is be authentic, be an integrous person, and model what you want to see. If you show up late, you show up unprepared, you show up without focus, not clear, guess what? You're inspiring the whole culture. What happens when you're anxious? It's like a cow in the pasture with other cows. They hit the electric fence and they go screaming and yelling. The whole herd runs. Human group emotional systems are no different. So when people are nervous, people are anxious, reflect. When the conductor does not get what they want, they look in the mirror. What am I doing is causing a problem. So the first principle is foundations. Do you know where you're going? Have you defined it? Have you spent more time than anybody else being very clear on the results you want so you can inspire other people to do that? Doesn't mean you have all the answers. One other fallacy, a trap that leaders get into is they feel like they must have all the right answers. Wrong. Leaders must have the right questions. The right questions help other people rise. They become a partner in solving a problem. You declare what the vision is, you declare the outcomes, and then you let other people play the notes. You get to approve those, and you get to coach people on that. #2, when I got to hire, like I said, Atlanta Symphony, Florida Orchestra, I hired the best player. I had good music, I had a well-prepared choir, I wanted the best players. So I had to know who to hire. Then when I had them, I had to give them good music, and then I had to be prepared. So the second principle is about relationships. Leadership is fundamentally about relationships. We must be in relationship. It's not important. A lot of us, I struggle with this. I want people to like me. So if it's a difficult decision, it's a challenge for me. I would rather that they respect me, that I make principle-based decisions. We have a firm agreement. 90% of the people I work with don't have an agreement. And most of the ones that have them are really bad agreements. the agreements suck. Suck is like halfway to success. Success. So they do not, this man's work is very valuable. I'll collect later. So having somebody that knows how to write contracts, to review it, to look at the holes, and to challenge you on your assumptions. So we want to have really good, very focused, very clear outcomes. We want to make sure we are equipped. Leaders always work on themselves. I'm going to be in Vegas in a couple of weeks, and I'll be on the stage with Les Brown and Jack Canfield, Bob Proctor, who's 80 years old. He could be anywhere he wants to. And he said 3 years ago when we were together, people say, Bob, you're 77. When are you going to slow down? He said, I'm 77. I got to speed up. I got more to learn, more to do. He says, I do one thing, and I do it well. I teach leadership. It's like listening to the voice of God when he speaks. He is so clear. He has studied the topic, and he doesn't get fragmented. This is what I do. And he builds that engagement with people, anybody in the sphere. He's very clear on the principles, very clear on the knowledge, and has built relationships with world-class people. So if you want to be a good leader, you want to be a better leader, you want to be the excellent leader that you were created to be, always work on self. Never stop. In my last 4 years in study with Bowen Family Systems, I've learned more than I learned in my first 64 years of life. So the knowledge expansion has changed my whole profession, my whole business, my whole engagement. So we got really good work. We got really good people. The third one, and this is where we slip, 90%, Ken may validate or argue this, 90% of people I see fail in the execution phase, the implementation phase. When I talk to people about team execution, they get really excited because they think we get to shoot people. But it's the implementation phase is where 90% of us go in the holes because we think we can do it, instead of saying, okay, there's somebody I need. 10% of what our work is our expertise, our knowledge base, and our vision. 90% is all that other stuff that makes it work. So finding people that can help in the systems, finding people that have been there, finding somebody that's not in your discipline. Some of what we need is somebody outside of your profession, somebody that's totally different. What I offer people is a totally different perspective, because I have worked in corporate America, but I didn't stay there very long, and I just said, oh, listen, this is not for me. So I come at this from a very different perspective, and I'm going to ask hard questions. I love the writings of the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. He talks about Christian worship, and he says, worship is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. So I like that model. I like that model. Okay, you're real comfortable, but we're bringing all this money in, but somehow it's not getting to the bottom line. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle we call people. The business schools call it the soft skills. Well, it's a hard skill if you're not making the money you ought to make. You familiar with the Gallup polls? That 70% of the workforce is either disengaged or actively disengaged? 70%. That's huge. That's not even factoring executives. That's not factoring conflict. That's just disengaged. And they say in America that's $500 billion of lost income. So your money, you don't have to do more sales to make more money. We want to improve the functioning of our culture. It starts with us. If you want to change your culture, change yourself. People will respond to that. That's the number one leadership rule that I've learned in all my years. Change yourself, other people change for that. If it's not working, address it. So we have good people. We are the person that has the right to ask. So I'm in rehearsal. Stop it, and I say, trumpets. It's too loud. Take it down one dynamic level. And oboe, you're flat. Pick it up, quarter tone. Now, I have to know what's wrong. I addressed it. I didn't attack the person. You think they're mad? No. You've created this culture of expectation that the conductor is supposed to say, okay, that's not working. Here's what I need. Factual, clear, concise, let's do it again. We've created this culture of expectation. If you don't do that, you're perceived to be a poor leader, and it festers. Well, he didn't fix that. He just didn't want to hurt their feelings. I am so surprised how many leaders will not do that correction because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And it costs them money eventually it costs them relationship, because they didn't step up and ask for what they needed. This little thing that's a problem becomes nuclear if we don't deal with it immediately, kindly, directly. I said, take it down. So we stop, we fix it, we have relationships, we built the respect, because we have defined the outcome we want, we have defined the principles. We represent excellence. We breed excellence in good systems. Now, how many people have ever attended a boring, unproductive meeting? Raise your hand. How many people think that was a stupid question? How many people have ever led a boring, unproductive meeting? Yeah, honest, we got 3 honest people here. I'll put my hand up. All right, say this. No more boring meetings. Now, say it like you mean it. No more boring meetings. Now, do you like boring meetings? Now, if we have a bad rehearsal as a conductor, we're likely to have a bad concert. It defies logic to think, okay, we can have a bad meeting, but we're going to develop a good business. We're going to have a good process. We've taught people to underfunction. We've taught people mediocrity because our meetings are terrible. Now, here's Hugh's 10 tips, and there's a free download on my site for a whole white paper on this and some videos. So here's my 10 tips. I'm going to give you really concise so I can talk forever on this. I studied to be a facilitator, very similar to being a conductor. You get the best thinking of the group, which is not group thinking. You allow people to function at a high level. You allow for this thing, you use the word ensemble. That's what happens. We don't make ensemble happen. We create the space and the clarity that people listen to each other. They learn to breathe, they learn to do the phrases, they learn to function as a unit. That's synergy. That's why I call my company Synervision. It's the synergy we get with a common vision. So I truncated that and trademarked Synervision. It represents ensemble in a non-musical setting. So we teach people in our rehearsals. So this is rehearse for success. We do things over and over because we've been taught, and most of the time we've been taught wrong, or we've inherited systems that are broken. And we repeat them and we expect different results. So I like to challenge people to think in a different paradigm. If it's not working, are you willing to change it? Are you? All right, if I insult somebody, I'm not sorry. And if I don't insult you, raise your hand and I'll work harder. So, number 1 rule, and I heard the word today. Number 1 rule is never ever use an agenda. Now, how many people have been taught to use an agenda for a meeting? An agenda represents activity. We're going to talk about marketing. Here's the activity we're going to have today. I don't know about you, I got enough activity, enough noise in my life. So let's change the paradigm. We're going to talk about marketing. That's an agenda item. Drop the word, change the paradigm. We're going to create deliverables. We're going to end this meeting in 87 minutes having defined the top 5 marketing strategies that will increase our revenue by 25% and our bottom line profit by 30%. Now the whole shift in paradigm is we're results focused. Talk about marketing, we show up. We're going to define this. You send it to them ahead. They come thinking about it, ready to move forward on that. So you say, here's our deliverables. It's also important to say what we're not going to do. So number 1, your purpose of the meeting is your deliverables. We're going to define this. Here's the outcome of this meeting. It's like goals for that timeline. So number 1, clear purpose. If you don't have a purpose, why have a meeting? Now, regularity of team meetings creates accountability, builds relationship, and builds communications. Communications is not based on data. Communications is based on relationship. If people care, show people you care. If people care, if they bought in, if you're having meetings where you say, here's the goal, 5 strategies. Now, we got smart people here. I asked you to work here. You create the strategy to get there. What's the action plan? So they co-create it, they own it, they take the accountability and the motivation to the peer-to-peer level. So you're not the daddy, you're not the mama. You are the leadership influencer. So how are we going to get there? You still get to veto it, but you coach so well you don't have to. So So you do it, you say, we're gonna come back together, here is our time-based action item. Here's the champion, here's the deadline, here's the specific action defined in results. So purpose, outcome. So that is, plan the meeting thoroughly. Every hour of meeting needs 2 to 3 hours of planning. People say, I don't have time. You don't have time not to plan. When I show up for a meeting, and it's me and the meeting leader, and he's sitting there with a yellow tablet saying, okay, what do you think we ought to talk about? I know right now they're going to waste my time. When I've been sent the deliverables ahead, and I show up, and we're starting right on time, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're not going to do this. Setting off limits. We're going to talk about the big picture. We're not going to talk about the details. Details come next week. So if we get in the weeds, we're not going to get the big picture. So define what we're going to do, define what we're not going to do, and then you outline, you schedule how you're going to do it. We're going to get there by doing this. So it's empowering people to step up. That's one of the major things we do as leaders, is we don't empower people through a common vision, common purpose that we work out, we hammer out. How many people use consensus as one of your tools? What does consensus mean?
It means that we discuss something and we pull it together and we come up with a common idea or belief about what it is, a solution or where we're going.
Yeah, most people think it's unanimous agreement, which it's not.
Yeah.
Consensus is a decision, I'm going to rephrase in my way, it's a decision made through group process and backed by relationship.
So the concept is we're in it together.
Yes, sir.
See, the idea is that I'm the president, but we're in it together. See, all of us want to make the company successful and move it forward. So what we need is your input and mine, we blend it together and make it work. So they buy in to the idea that we collectively want to be successful.
Buy into the idea together, and you've empowered them to rise to a higher level of functioning.
Absolutely.
Did you give up any of your authority?
No.
Yes, you've not given up a bit of it, you've actually elevated your authority. Because you've surrounded yourself with people of higher potential. Finding good people, putting them in systems so they can function. Anybody on a nonprofit board? Nonprofit boards are famous for taking really good people and putting them in a situation where they really can't function. Does that ever happen to you? Take my magazine and give it to your nonprofit. Yeah, they can read it online for free. I'm on a mission to eliminate boring meetings because that kills us, that paralyzes, that puts us in a box. So identify who's going to lead it. If you're going to lead, lead it. Doesn't mean you got to boss people. Keep us on track. This is our deliverables. This is what we're going to do. Begin and end on time. Have you ever been to a meeting, you're there right on time, and they say, we're going to wait for Sally because she's not here. So wait a minute. She's not there on time, so you're going to waste my time. Throw cold water on me. Start on time, end on time, fill it with meaningful work. Here's a tip. In 40 years of running meetings, never once has anybody been angry when I've adjourned a meeting early. Sometimes they just stand around and talk because they don't know what to do. But get it done, get to work. People don't like meetings. Make sure you got people there. We want to make sure all the instruments play. Sometimes the person that's sitting there and not participating is processing. And if you don't prompt that comment, you're going to miss something that could be very changing of that whole paradigm. Somebody's processing. You probably figured out by now I'm an extrovert. So I'm going to tell you what I think. I scare the hell out of introverts sometimes because they think it's all done. And I'm really trying to talk about, let's negotiate this. But there might be somebody that's just very polite, and you've sat there and you've taken it in, and I say, well, David, what do you think? And pay attention, because David's been thinking. David's been watching people. David's been observing. Observing is a good leadership skill. Listening is a good leadership skill. And David's going to speak. And it might be very important, and it might be really important. If you don't do it, you might have missed something very important. So we do bring people, but we have different personalities. And so sometimes I know I dominate people because I'm a little gregarious, maybe more than a little. And so I have to balance that out by stopping. Silence is great. In coaching, we use silence. You've validated, you've listened. When somebody speaks, there's a silence, but then prompt that. So there's a skill in running a meeting like there is running a rehearsal. So we all show up, we think we know how how everything works. We're on a team. We've been asked to be on a team. A list of norms. This is sort of our guiding principles for how we're going to function. If it's an ongoing team, have the people write their covenant. What do you promise to everybody on this team? Even in any kind of situation, it's really important for people to say to each other, communication's based on relationship, leadership's based on relationship, financial results are based on relationship. What are we going to do? What do we commit to? We got contracts. We do contracts. But the other dynamic is, what is our covenant relationship? What do we say to each other that we're going to do? This is a really essential part of higher performing. So when people go around and write down, I use storyboards. They write down a piece of paper and they put it up. I will be here on time. It's my commitment. I will come prepared. I will make sure everybody knows the information they need to know as a result of my work. When people create that sense of norms, I will honor other people's opinion and listen before I argue about it. How many times have you seen people argue and they really haven't listened to what the other person has been saying? So everybody wastes time. So why don't we just see if we can figure out what it is. And the beauty of consensus, Robert's Rules of Order is great. When we come into somebody, got an opinion, and we got another group that's got another opinion, which sometimes happens in Washington. And they have somebody has a motion and somebody has a second, and you talk about it and you call for the vote. It passes 5-4. You still leave divided. And the way you describe consensus is we look at the options, and there might be another option we didn't consider, which might be better than what either one of us thought to begin with. So how do we open up the dialogue? So that's another really important piece of norms. We will seek consensus wherever possible. Legally, boards are required to have an up and down vote on certain things. There's a lot of things you don't have to do that about. You can say, common consensus? Yes. And it's a powerful group, and then the group, back to what I said before, the group holds itself peer-to-peer accountable. Nothing worse than the feeling that you've let down your colleagues. Record the information. If you're brainstorming, I use storyboards. I use sticky walls. People see it. You remember 10% of what you hear, educators tell us. You remember 20% of what you see. You put it together, it goes to 65 to 80%. So people stay focused, they stay on track, they're not buried in their computer or their piece of paper. So when I run meetings, we don't have electronics. We do the old-fashioned. We write down things and we talk, and we face each other. So you go over what you're going to do before you get there. You're going to achieve this. You talk about how you're going to do it. We're going to do these 5 strategies for marketing. First, we'll brainstorm all the options. Then we'll see if there's any common group them, any commonality. Then we'll see if there's any hierarchy. This one is more important than this one, or a sequence. So we might come up with a sequence of activities that would be powerful. We've got the whole plan there. Then, before you adjourn, you ever been to a meeting where people think of great stuff and everybody leaves, assuming that somebody else is going to do it? We come up with great ideas and they go in the trash because they say, well, whatever happened to that idea? Nobody took ownership. I like the word champion because they're going to make sure it happens. Doesn't mean they have to do it. They want to make sure the idea lives. So the champion, that was the action plan I talked about out of order. Here's the to-do, the action item, the deliverable, along with the timeline, and the champion. Who's going to make it happen? If there's no name there, it will not happen. So don't fool yourself. That engages people, that empowers people, that creates peer-to-peer accountability. And last one, leader is always in control. Conductor is always in control. If the meeting, I run lots of meetings with power groups, and there's somebody who used to be in the military, used to be a general, somebody used to be a mayor, governor, and they think they've got this authority thing. And they want to say, I think we should do this now. And I'll say, General, thank you. We're going to write that down and put it in the parking lot. We're going back to what we were focused on doing now. And I can see people around the room going, because they're used to that person hijacking the meeting. So if you're in charge, don't let people hijack your meeting. Calm, present. If you handle conflict, you move toward it. Stay calm. Thank you for your comment. We're going to write it down and put it here. Now, this particular circumstance, after a 3-day meeting, who was the first person that came to me and said how much we got done? It was the guy who kept on task. And by the way, we got to his item. We put it in the right perspective in the right place. So we honored the idea, we put it in sequence, and we also made sure that nobody could hijack the meeting. I didn't make anybody mad, I didn't insult anybody, I said trumpets are too loud. Fourth principle, to make all this work, you can't show up burned out every day. People tell me, this is their rest in the music. Rests are there for a very specific reason. People tell me, I work 7 days a week, haven't had a vacation for years. I work all the time, 15 hours a day, like they're proud of it. Don't persecute yourself. You cannot compromise your health, your energy, your brain by being overworked. So that's something that we all struggle with, all of us, just to be, straight up. We are very, there's lots of noise. We're very challenged. I'm very challenged. Not enough hours in the day, not enough time, because I have more ideas than I could get to. My discipline, we don't have discipline and commitment to that discipline. We really water down what we're going to do. So my discipline is stay balanced. So I plan my rest time. I plan my play time. I plan my thinking time. If you don't give yourself a place to evaluate and revise and rethink, how can you approach life on a continuing basis? How can you be your best leader? How can you be prepared? When do you work? When do you play? When do you think? When do you revise? And put it on your calendar. That's a commitment. So those are the 4 principles that I work with leaders. When I work with a corporate leader that's got a team, I give them this baton. It's called Conducting Transformation. It's a program that I do. And I said, okay, here's the baton. Now,
What do you want me to do with it?
we have to, okay, good question.
Can I end the meeting now?
All right. I usually ask if you finish before I do, raise your hand. I won't ask you. This is my wrap, and I want to see if there's some questions or challenges. You want to stump the host, the guest here. So I say, here's the baton. Benjamin Zender's another, he wrote the book, the Art of, I don't know. Benjamin Zander teaches, he teaches in Boston. I'll think of the book in a minute. And he goes to his class and says, okay, you all have an A. Now you have to earn it. Changes the whole paradigm, turn the paradigm around. So I've dumped a bunch of stuff here. I want to just pause a minute and see if you have some challenges, some quips, comments, quotes, criticisms, some commentary. You have a question, something I prompted or something I didn't do or something I said stupid you want to clarify. Yes, sir.
Years ago, Doug and I were working with an executive, Doug Strauss, out in California. And the guy spent a lot of time actually playing golf with us. And we said, don't you have to be around to run your company? He said, I hired the very best. When they got on board, I gave them the training. They understand what's expected of them. If they need me, they can always contact me. So I'm thinking about this guy in relation to your metaphor of the orchestra. Couldn't you argue that once the concert maestro or the conductor rehearses the orchestra, everybody understands what they're supposed to do, that you're not really needed at that point to conduct the orchestra anymore? They can play without you.
That's assuming everything goes according to plan, which rarely happens in my world. The orchestra responds, but sometimes things just get off a little bit, and that can snowball really fast. And so being there at the right moment to do that. So the sign of a good leader is things work just as well when they're not there. And that person had it under control. However, I think we constantly work on relationship, and we constantly need to be there. Because if you're not there, things can open up. And you're the visionary, and you see it macro and micro. So being with the people and building relationship. So there's a danger in being absent too much.
Well, he was there for them. There were times where he would get a call and he knew somebody could not handle it without his intervention. He was there. So the orchestra metaphor breaks down a little bit. You're saying with the orchestra, you have to be there to conduct.
Just to kind of keep it nurtured.
Okay. All right.
To keep it, and I'm a fan for whatever works, and I don't pretend to have all the right answers. I do know that leaders are absent more than they need to be, both physically and emotionally. You can be in your office and be no good. You can be there and not be engaged with people and not be good. So a lot of leaders that are there, they interfere too much. There's a big difference in micromanaging and coaching and nurturing. Big difference. So I'm a fan. I mean, there's people that are very autocratic that do well. I don't think in today's culture, especially with millennials coming up, they don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want autocratic leadership. They want more authenticity. It's a whole different dynamic than we as boomers have expected and created. So a lot of major corporations are having a crash because the intellectual property and the skills are not downloading to the generations. We don't know how to have a relationship. I did a back and forth with my editor, who's a millennial, about the similarities between boomers and millennials. So if we start looking at similarities and differences, it's a whole different world. So what works, do it. I think if you're not there, there's a danger of you not seeing what you need to see. And many of us have a lot at stake in our companies financially and for our future. So there's a certain risk of being absent too much. This is the balance piece.
Right.
How do we balance all of the others? So that's a really good question. I think it's a one-on-one, but to watch out for what you don't know. It's what you don't know that'll get you.
The key in that situation, like you, with the concept of delegation. This individual was a great delegator. You hit it right on the head. What is the fine line? How do you know when to delegate? How do you know how much rope to give to people? How do you know when to pull back? This guy was helped to hire the very best people, and it took him a while, but he playing golf a couple times a week and was very successful. So what is the magic thing that you've seen?
Having a relationship with those people. I mean, you don't have to be in the room to know what's going on. And the primary piece of transformational leadership is authenticity, but right behind it is to find things to take off your plate. We create a system, and you can walk away, like you got a Bach thing going, you can walk away and listen, but they don't know how to play. Now, what happens when you hit a speed bump? What happens when you're doing the Mahler thing when it needs a lot of nuance? So it varies extensively with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And some ensembles, are self-directed, but the kind of music is real important. So there's some music that needs more improvisatory engagement from the leader. And some businesses are that way.
But in your lingo, this guy hired the very best musicians. He gave them the score and rehearsed them, so they really understood what was expected of them. They understood their expectations. He held them accountable. He empowered them.
It works.
That's like management 101.
Right, but you can't put one model into every situation. Right. Now,
But it starts with hiring the best, I believe.
and then empowering them, and then having the mechanisms for accountability, which we don't know about, the contracts, the agreements, the processes in place. And I find that business changes, and we have to adapt to it. And so adapting those nuances. And the team is a reflection of us. If you are perceived to be apathetic, so that's where the relationship piece. So there are some people pull it off really well. So there's not one size that fits all. That's why I come in, there's not one size fits all, but there are liabilities to any kind of leadership.
Right.
So you had a question.
I actually was going to make a statement. If I were, which I'm obviously not, going to be hired as a conductor, probably one of my most important hires would be my first violin. And I would establish that person as a leader in my orchestra, and eventually, once they shared that vision with me, they would conduct the warm-ups prior to my attendance. They would get everybody in tune, they would get that sort of thing taken care of, so that when I came on board and I stepped in at the front, now it's time to focus on the nuances. Now it's time for me to teach the different instruments what my expectation is and what, okay, you're doing this well, but you need just a little bit less, as you were referring to earlier. So I think that maybe that's could be an analogy to how that person needs.
That's called the
some
concert master,
independence.
the concert mistress.
Right.
Yeah, they tune the orchestra, and there's a whole hierarchy. Every section has a section leader.
Absolutely.
And there's a whole hierarchy. The vision and articulation of the vision belongs to the leader. So the mechanics can happen.
Well, and you can look at an athletic team and say, coach.
Absolutely. You can't be on the field.
But neither can you be absent every game, because you are not just the leader, you're an integral part of the performance. And I think a conductor is obviously it should be an integral part of the performance.
I've had the opportunity to work with some really great leaders, power leaders, under their influence and with some great conductors who are leaders. And first time I was with Robert Shaw, somebody else prepared the choir. We had 2 weeks with it. The first 2 days were with Joe Plummerfeld in Westminster and Princeton. And he came up, but he knew exactly what the director wanted. Scores were marked, he knew exactly. And so we did the mechanics. 2 very fine conductors. Actually, the one that prepped it, Leonard Bernstein, called America's greatest choral conductor, prepped for a world-class choral conductor. I mean, they were just best of best. However, that's what you want. And somebody has their role. We create the trap. The trap is the job description. It's a list of tasks. I don't do that, it's not in my job. So we create what's the HR department, the Human Remains Department? We create this department where, see, I told you that's offensive. This is a department where we have to do the rules. We put them in a job description and put you in a box. Why don't we create role responsibility? And the missing piece is expectations. We hire you to do marketing. Your role is to create a marketing plan and bring us business. And here's the expectations, 30, 60, 90 days, we want you to achieve this. We have something to measure. So it's like a contract written in a covenant form. Here's what I expect of you, and guess what? They get to say, this is what I expect of you. You've got a marketing person, I want you to fill all the rooms. I want you to fill all the banquet space. These are my expectations. It's clearly written down. You work it out together, they write it. This is not over-functioning, you have them write it, you know they understood it. You've got a piece of paper that says, this is what we're gonna do. Now you've got a platform to coach them. So you're not micromanaging. That's a very good analogy. The concert master takes that piece. And so there's a whole functionality. Every single orchestra works differently. Every single company works differently. But what works and how do you maintain excellence? Yes, sir.
I was just gonna add to what Ken was talking about is that you know, you have an example where the score's exactly perfectly written out. And even then, there could be days where the conductor shows up and someone came to work and they're having a bad day, or someone had a death in the family, or someone had a bad interaction with the relationship. It has nothing to do with work. And so that conductor's got to jump in and adjust and accommodate, and even maybe even take some other action to make sure the performance is on the money. And now we're talking about you know, the whole, you know, stuff that you're performing that's exactly written down perfectly, right? And it still needs you. And that's not how real world business is run. We don't have a perfect script. We don't have everything laid out in black and white.
Right.
That we just do X, Y, Z, and X and
Great
work all the way
question.
to the end. And so in reality, you know, you have to help them understand where's the leadership function when there's chaos. And we have to live in chaos and make it work and make dynamic decisions on the fly.
Yes, sir. That's a really good point. This is strategy, and what you're talking about is tactics. So there's a difference in objectives. You know, here's our objective. They don't change. What happens is what happens in the tactics of economy. So that's where you separate the leaders from the followers. You know, you've got to make it happen regardless. And you know, it's not going to go as planned. You just assume that. And by the way, your strategy is going to update. There's some musical compositions that are improvisatory, and every time you perform them, it's different. So that's a very good analogy. We have to be alert. We have to be prepared. And if you don't know your strategy, you can't make those adjustments and stay on track. So that's a really good point. Stay flexible. So flexible, you can hardly stand up? No, you got to stand up. So that's a good point. Thank you.
Our company, we work on the WIT theory. We're in it together. I have everybody call me by my first name, even though I own the company. There's over 200 of us. My job is to be the visionary, to define where we want to go, this type of thing, and so on. And have everybody have a clear understanding of, in general terms, what they're expected to do. The other part of what happens is that I tell everybody that every time you answer the phone, answer a piece of mail, do any transaction, you are the company. I can tell the client anything I want. If you don't deliver it, we lose them. Here's the difference, though. We really are in it together, because what we do is take the profits of the company, take out the expenses, the other part we need for growth, and divide it among the employees based on their performance review. That's not mine. But the idea is we really are in it together. If you don't do your job, our profits will be smaller. Your piece will be less. The other people around them get to them if they don't do their job. And by the way, we made the Inc. 500 4 times in a row. Only been 16 companies in history that ever did that. Because we had a 5,700% growth rate for 5 years.
Say that again.
Because we're in it together.
How many times did you make the Inc. 500?
4 times in a row. There's only been 16 companies that ever did that. But the idea is, I'm not very smart, but when we get in there and we define the goal, make sure everybody knows where we wanna go, and we really are in it together. When we have a meeting, we come and talk about, this is the issue, how do we get there from here? I have an idea, but I want everybody else's ideas, and we work together. And what happens is you don't get any of this, gee, that's not my job, I'm not gonna do that. It works like this, gee, that needs to be done, I'm gonna see if I can get it done, or get Bobby here to help me, or whatever. But everybody's pulling together, because we really are in it together. If we make a profit, they get a piece of it. If we don't make a profit, there's nothing to divide.
He just articulated a whole set of guiding principles for how they function. Did you hear that? This is how we function. You ever go to Disney? Their principles are very clear. You're the guest, they always entertain. You ever fly Southwest? That's a entertainment company. It's a hospitality company. They just happen to run an airline. Very clear principles. They both make a lot of money. Both those companies are very clear on their principles. I want to work for you.
Thank you
You're
for
in it
that.
together.
We
Work
have-
for Bill.
Yeah, right.
We have almost no turnover. The only time we lose somebody is when they die or something or retire.
I'll be glad to entertain questions. We're in a hot room coming up, pushing the time. These are not laws of success. These are concepts to think about. And where are we creating situations that we limit ourselves and limit our groups? And as you pointed out, you got to be versatile. You got to be alert to what's really going on. That means you got to be there sometimes, both emotionally and physically. The parable of the sower. The sower sows the seed. Some gets on rocky soil and doesn't grow. Some gets in the thorns, it gets choked out. Some is in fertile soil and it grows. We keep sowing the seeds. We keep nurturing people. We keep advocating for what we believe in. And we'll find the fertile soil. Those are the people that you can help them be healthy and grow. It's up to you to inspire people. It's up to you to show up and look in the mirror and say, I want to be the very best. Thank you for letting me give you all my crazy ideas today.
Thank you.
If you want a magazine, they're up here. Grab one.
Great job. Appreciate you coming. Thanks, everybody. See you next meeting.